Whether you're outside grilling, changing diapers, or just trying to catch a breath, the Young Dad Podcast is your spot for real conversations about fatherhood, manhood, and everything in between. I'm your host, Jay, and I sit down with dads, experts, and everyday men to talk about the joys, the struggles, and the lessons that come with raising kids and building a meaningful life. From mental health and relationships to faith, family, and the funny stuff only dads understand, YDP is here to remind you that you're not doing this alone. So grab a juice box, grab a snack, kick back, and join the conversation because fatherhood doesn't come with a manual, but it should come with a podcast. What happens when a young dad and his best friend, an aspiring one, sit down to have the conversations men usually don't have? You get Why Dad, a mix of honesty, humor, and heart that reminds men everywhere that showing up, even imperfectly, still matters. Today, we're talking about all things Why Dad and what it means to grow up while raising the next generation. Because let's be real, being a good dad starts with being a better man. And so, whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you finally got a moment to sit down in the living room, relax, throw your favorite podcast up on the YouTube on the TV, whatever you're doing, however you're listening, thanks for being here and thanks for tuning in. Today's guests are Paul and Andrew, the co-host of Why Dad podcast, where a young dad and an aspiring one unpack what it really means to become the best husband, father, and man they can be. Paul's journey after tragedy, losing his daughter, Isla, at 22 weeks, that loss forced him to reevaluate everything and step into the father and husband his family needed. Andrew's story is different. He's a punk, professional uncle, no kids yet. And he's also in Budge training, who grew up Catholic, once studied in seminary, and now brings humor and curiosity to the journey of learning manhood before fatherhood. Together, they mix reflection and real talk, jokes and depth, reminding all of us manhood is a process, not a performance. So make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's welcome the boys to the podcast. Boys, welcome.
Thank you, Jay.
Jay. We're going to have to
course,
steal
yeah.
that intro for our own podcast. That was
Yeah.
so well put.
Feel free. But yeah, well, I'm excited to have you guys. How did Why Dad come to life for you guys?
I'll let Paul start that out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll go back a little bit even farther. Andrew and I, we've known each other since high school, and that was high school out in New Hampshire. And then after high school, our paths diverged. And then about a decade ago, I moved to Minnesota and we reconnected. And we've become best friends. And, we're like, we want to do something. We don't know what that is, but it's like, we're going to do it together. So we were putting our heads together. And, life happened. Jay, you mentioned Sarah's and my loss of Isla, and that, personally left me reeling, like, how do I be the dad, husband, man that I need to be, and in your intro, you mentioned how being a dad doesn't come with a manual. And I sure felt that. So I was like, I need to figure out, what my brand of dadhood is and how I can do that when I'm running on fumes. And then, I threw out the idea to Andrew, even though, he wasn't a dad, but I was like, hey, I know you want to be a dad. What do you think about this? And yeah, I'll let you, Andrew, talk about your side of things.
I mean, you put the history so well put, Paul. Paul and I, as best friends, do and should talk all day, every day. And our conversation, like if you listen to our podcast, that's really a recording of our normal everyday conversations. We are constantly challenging each other to be better men, to be better husbands, better fathers,
Calling each other out on our shit.
Exactly. We do. We challenge each other constantly. And so part of it was what we already have this mentality to be better. And then with Paul's motivation and inspiration coming from Isla, we're like, let's just record these conversations and how to become, essentially better men, better selves. So that way we can give our best to our children, to our wives, my future wife and children, wherever they are. I'm looking for them. In so doing, one of our big things was we want to help other people, but as long as we're helping ourselves and challenging ourselves primarily, like that's a win for us. And so if we can help other people along the way, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's an interesting dynamic too. Like talking about like fatherhood, but one of you guys isn't a dad yet, yet, of course, with the yet there. And so what kind of conversations are you guys having that typical like men don't have like every day, like on your show?
Yeah. We've had a number of great ones. I mean, we've talked about grit and resilience, which I think is maybe something that is a little bit more prevalent among men. But we've also talked about critical thinking. We've talked about um, EQ, emotional quotient, your ability to your emotional maturity, as a man. With like many of us men in our society have grown up, like emotions are bad, don't feel, like keep it in a box, and that will come back to bite you in the long run. And it doesn't provide a good model for your kids and can be a, catalyst of like anxiety and stress and additional, mental health challenges. So those are just a number of things, but really no topic is taboo. Similar to your onboarding for your podcast, like we're down to talk about anything, and the nittier and grittier, the better.
Yeah, I think succinctly put, like one of our missions is what are the habits or virtues that we want to build in our own lives that we know will bring us to be successful, and that's a relative term, but what's going to bring us success, and what can we pass on and help our children build to be better people as well and more successful in the future.
Andrew, you always do such an awesome job
Well,
encapsulating
you're
it. I
going into the deep, and I just like summarizing. Yeah.
appreciate it. That's
Andrew,
why
or it
you're
looks
part of
like
the team.
Paul stays in the deep end. Andrew just goes to the shallow end with his floaties,
Yep.
and he just goes as far as he needs to. Doesn't want to get
Hmm.
too wet. Doesn't want to get too involved, too deep there. No, Andrew, I think it's interesting that you're doing this project with Paul, uh, because I think it's really uncommon for men who like don't have kids, even though they may be looking or wanting that and have that in their
Hmm.
plans and whatnot. Like they're not really like thinking about it or really caring too much about it. So why is this outside of Paul being like one of your best friends?
Hmm.
Like why do this?
Great question. Something I think about a lot. It really comes down to
Why doing this?
yeah, why dad? And part of it is that's why we chose the name for our podcast. Like, why dad? That's the question your kids ask you all the time. But we also wanted it to make like a question we ask ourselves. Like, why do I really want that? Why do I want to be a dad? Why am I a dad? And really, it comes down to the simple answer of I want to be the best man that I can possibly be. And in order to do that, I need to have goals and direction and structure. And I want to be a dad. And so I need to prepare myself now because I hear all the stories. My older brother is a father of 5, and I see what he's going through raising his 5 kids. And it's like, okay, I need to better prepare myself for when that happens. So it's not, yes, it's going to be hard. I'm not saying like to make it easier, but so that way I can say I'm ready for when that kid comes.
I love it. And then Paul, how has the podcast kind of helped you, I guess, work through losing a child?
Yeah. That's a great question. As far as working through the process of losing Isla, the podcast has given me an outlet, has helped me define in finer detail my purpose. Similar to Andrew talking about, having a direction in his life, this has helped me hone in on my purpose as a man, as a husband, and as a father, and it has kept me focused. Because otherwise, shortly after losing Isla, it's like I could wallow here in the depths of despair, and and like we can eke on by or not, or I can take the bull by the horns and optimize myself as much as possible so that I can show up as well as I can for my wife and for my kid and now kids. So it's given me a more focused approach to doing that.
I love it. And I think it's really cool too, like the dynamic you guys have, but being able to have this podcast, I think goes beyond just, hitting record. It's really you guys sharing your experience from your different perspectives to help others, to share your blueprint. And I really do think since you guys are doing it together, I think there's things that Andrew, you've gone through that you can directly help Paul with, and then vice versa. Things that
Absolutely.
Paul's gone through that you may face as well,
Hmm.
that you'll already kinda be prepared for, and I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I think it's more of just, like, you're already learning about these things to kinda prepare yourself for it, and then if it happens, God forbid it does happen, anything similar to child loss or anything like that, like, you have, A, someone to talk to about it, but B,
Hmm.
you kind of already know how to handle it. So I think that's really cool. I think that's why, my show, your guys' show is really important because we give those blueprints to
Hmm.
everyday dads, everyday people facing, similar challenges and whatnot. And it's not so much about the advice, right? Like there's plenty of advice out there. Anyone
Right.
can go and scroll TikTok or Instagram for 3 seconds and find advice about anything they want. Really, it's about the stories that we're sharing to help other men, other dads not feel so like they're in this bubble all by themselves, kind of
Hmm.
thing, and so isolated.
On your podcast, Jay, you mentioned this is a community, and we very much take the same approach. We want to have like that fraternity and that community of men, dads, future dads, somewhere where they can go and be heard and listen to other people maybe going through the same things as well. So it's really about just fostering that community like you're trying to do.
Yeah, it takes a village, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, you gotta have a village, you gotta have community, you gotta have people around. 'Cause you can't do it alone. You can't get through a lot of things alone. I mean, you gotta have people around, you gotta have people in your corner to help you through those really hard times, those really ugly times in life, and people around you as well to celebrate the good, to be around, so,
Absolutely.
let's see, so in your guys' conversations, the podcast you guys have, what are some of, like, the key things that you guys are seeing that are, like, common themes when you talk to other people, talk to guests, talk to each other, some things that keep coming back up?
Yeah. I think some of the things that I've seen, and Andrew, you can jump in with anything else that you've seen. You know, men, fathers trying to do it all, um, and taking the burden on of like their entire family. And yeah, we do have to support our family. We have to love our family, and we do have to be
Hmm.
strong for our family. We also have to take care of ourselves. We have to uh, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, we have to take care of ourselves so that way we can
Hmm.
show up for our family. Uh, you know, I think so often men see taking that time for themselves as selfish when actually it's an act of love.
Right.
I think another thing, and I'm sure you've seen this, Jay, and one of the reasons why like communities like yours are so important is in today's day and age where, most neighborhoods aren't like, at least the ones I've been, aren't tight knit anymore like they used to be. And that like with
Mhm,
technology, like everybody's on their devices, but then people around them, the community around them doesn't exist as much. So there's
Hmm.
a lot of isolation, a lot of
mhm.
loneliness. You talked about like men listening to our podcast and be like, oh yeah, like I'm not alone. Like that happens to me too. I would say those are the two things that jump out to me. Andrew, you have anything to add?
Well, on your website, one of the last lines of the first paragraph, Jay, you say connection over perfection. And that is a theme we've heard so often with everybody on our podcast. It's all about the connection. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to have your ups and your downs. And kind of as long as you're striving to have that connection with your children, that's the important part, the most
Yeah,
important part.
absolutely.
One of the questions I love to ask guests is, especially with some of the entrepreneurs that have tried to balance, building a successful business and a successful family, is how do you deal with failure and how do you help your children when they come head to head with a failure? Help them realize like that's okay. And that goes back to like that connection part as well. Like you're spending time listening to them, helping them learn from that mistake because you've had to learn through your own personal failures and not to take it as the end of the world, but just that's a part of life in order to be the best person you possibly can be. Yeah, honestly, like connection has been one thing that's really stood out with me. So,
Yeah. What about you, Jay? Is that consistent with what you've seen on your in your work, or what is there anything you would add?
I would say that it's a lot of that, right? Like there's a reason that I put that as kind of like the tagline, right? Because I feel like we all want to strive to be like the perfect husband, the perfect father, the perfect, employee at work. We all want to just, focus on the perfection side of it, right? Because I think that's what society pushes on us, right? Like, you need to be perfect in all these ways to be
Right.
the perfect man, to be the perfect father, to be the perfect husband, be the perfect friend, the perfect uncle, things like that. And so we're always trying to like give, but we miss out on like that connection piece that's
Mhm.
before all that. And we're such a disconnected society, Paul, kind of like
Yes.
you were saying. Like, we're very disconnected from each other. Like, we easily lose touch with each other. We easily lose track of each other. Life gets so busy. We forget about people. We stop talking to people. We don't connect as much. And even though we have these phones that make connection easier than ever, we connect even less
Yeah.
since the invention of a smartphone. And I think that's something that I really want to see come back to just everything. I think every conversation I have has that kind of undertone to it, is that we're all looking back for a connection, whether I have conversations about, child development, or if I'm talking about neurodiversities in parenting, or if I'm talking about divorce, or if I'm talking about any of the, 2 dozen playlists of different topics I have on my YouTube channel. Which, boys, if you have a YouTube channel and you're just starting out, set up your playlist well in advance. Don't wait till you have 250 something episodes to have a spur of the moment kind of energy burst and be like, I'm gonna put all these in the playlist. After
Noted.
250 plus episodes, don't do that. Um,
Duly noted.
I speak from experience. If you don't have
Yeah,
your
thanks for
playlist
the
lined
tip.
up and set up, then it's easier to create them as you go and add to them, and
Mhm.
go back and filter through all 200 something of your episodes, and then go back through and link them to different things. And yeah, thank goodness for AI to help me out with that project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, other than that, like I'm saying, I think just connection, right? No matter the
Mhm.
conversation you're having, I think we all just desperately wanna connect with ourselves, and we wanna connect with our families more, we wanna connect with our spouses more, we wanna connect with our kids more, we wanna
Mhm.
connect with our friends more, and we make a ton of excuses to not do that.
Yeah.
And we find every rhyme and reason to go away from that. We're too busy, or they're busy, or they're probably busy, or I still have enough time to give to that right now. I want to give that more time, but when are you going to have more time, kind of thing, or you're going to forget,
Mhm.
or things like that. So I think we really do want to just connect. That's what it comes down to. We just want to connect. We want to connect with everybody, and we don't do that. Our society's got taking away the connection piece of it,
Mhm.
which is what helped our country, build, and what helped businesses build and people build and
Right.
all that stuff. Yeah, the connection is what we're missing.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, we feel that deeply. And one of the things we're trying to do, we talked about community and we want to build a community. And eventually it might be a virtual one and it might be nationwide. Who knows? But where it matters and where it's going to start is here locally.
Yeah.
We
Mhm.
live in the Twin Cities and we want to get a group of guys, dads and hopeful dads, aspiring dads together who, yeah, aren't chasing perfection, but they want to, be intentional about being the type of man and dad
Mhm.
they wanna be. We wanna
Mhm.
get together and have those conversations. And so I'm gonna mention this, Andrew, hopefully you don't mind this, but to hold ourselves to a little bit of
Yeah.
accountability, we're gonna have our first event on January 14th. Um,
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm saying it now because we've scheduled it like 2 or 3 times now and it hasn't happened. So if we say it on air, it has to happen now.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
But yeah, we're going to get guys together. We're going to do stuff, right? I think the first one is going to be a golf sim, right? Because that's how guys often connect. You
Yeah.
can do something
Get a
together.
guy moving, get a guy talking.
Yep. And then
This is gonna
we'll
for
also talk
sure.
about the real shit.
Yeah.
But to address exactly that issue of, you know, where is that connection? We feel so lonely and we
Mhm.
need that as men, as humans.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think, the only other thing I would say is just that I one thing I set out to do is just help other men, like, be more intentional about
Hmm.
their
Mhm.
day-to-day, be more intentional about their relationships with their spouses, be more intentional about their relationship with their kids, be more intentional in the way they show up at work, be more intentional in the way they show up in general, and I think that intentionality is a huge piece. So between connection and intentionality, I think those are the 2 biggest things that are missing, and I'm not saying that the desire is not there. Right, you can have the desire, but you have to be intentional about what you're gonna do with that desire. You could have the want to have better connection, but are you gonna be intentional about taking the steps to do it, kinda thing. So,
Exactly.
that's kind of my biggest 2 things
Yeah.
that I focus on, and of course, sharing stories.
Mhm.
Sharing people's stories, sharing what they've been through, sharing how they've overcome it, I think is really important too. Because I think that's where we connect. Like I mentioned a bit ago, right? There's plenty of advice out there. I could write
Yeah.
advice pieces, I could write advice columns for hours, for days on end over on my Substack
Mhm.
and, put stuff out there. But, what's gonna be more impactful, an advice piece or me putting out a detailed article, like a blueprint to understanding not like a blueprint, but like a whole like blueprint. I'm just gonna call it a blueprint, but a blueprint to like understanding like narcissism, narcissistic abuse
Right.
in relationships, right? Like I could put out advice all day about parenting, things like that, but I think it's more impactful if I take the conversations I've had on the podcast and turn them into something practical. And then, of course, with that, mix in different things, like different attachments in that,
Mhm.
like a therapeutic like sheet to understand kind of like what narcissism is based on like my experience. I'm a mental health professional, so I can mix some of those things. And yeah, and just I think that's more impactful. I think that's gonna help a lot more people than them just getting some cheap advice. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. The more personable and personal you can make it, the greater the impact it's gonna have instead of just a top 10 thing list of things to do or whatnot. So
Mhm.
Anything else, boys, that's on your mind? Want to talk about this morning?
Well, I love that you're talking about intentionality. I'm curious, what would one way of being intentional be, that you would that you found or that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing about being more intentional, it really depends on what you're trying to be more intentional with, though. So I think you have to specifically define it. I think that's your first step. You have to specifically define what you want to be more intentional with. So let's take an example of spending more time with our kids, right? Let's take that super easy, super simple to wrap your head around. So to be more intentional with that, there's really only a couple things you can do. A, plan it, right? So
Mhm.
if you're gonna be intentional with it, make sure that you're off of work in time. Make sure that you've already set up, with your significant other, like, hey, I'm gonna spend, this time with this kid today, or then this kid, in a few days, kind of thing. Like, can you handle the other kids while I do that, like this one-on-one time? Because I want to be that's important to me. So you got to communicate that. You got to communicate that with your spouse, things like that. Unless it's one kid kind of thing, then that makes it easier. But multiple children require, multiple pieces to be moved here. So setting up like the plans for where the other kids are going to go and then pre-planning where you're going to go, right? Pre-planning like, okay, we're going to go do this, and then of course following through, I think is how to do that, of course. And then while you're there, you have to be intentional about how present you are. Y- Leave your phone in the car kind of thing. Wherever you're gonna be, if you're going to like a trampoline park or something, right? There's gonna be plenty of people with their phones there in case if something was to happen. Wherever you go, there's gonna be other people with phones. It's okay if you
Yep.
you forget yours, depending on situation, or if you're going on like a hike or something, just throw it in your bag, right?
Mhm.
You don't got to keep it in your hands, kind of thing, and then just be present while you're in that moment and stay focused on your kid and that time you're spent together. And I think that about covers it to show up, like, more intentionally. It's really simple. I think a lot of us, we overthink it. It's like, "Well, how am I gonna show up? How am I gonna be more intentional? How am I gonna do this? Blah, 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 blah." It's like, let's rewind a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's talk about it. Let's make it really
Mhm.
super simple for all of our man brains to understand,
Right.
and then monkey see, monkey do kinda thing, and we'll make that work. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. In order to get where you're going, you gotta know where you're going. You gotta define what that is, and then you plot out the map to get there. Yeah, that makes total sense. But yeah, I don't have anything else, Andrew. Do you?
Well, this is a question I ask when we're hosting, and I want to ask you, like, what's one thing you would want aspiring or future dads to take away, like from like one's like top piece that we can, like, I personally can apply starting today.
top shelf piece. Man, that's the good stuff right there. Let me see. Top shelf piece. I became a dad when I was 22,
Right.
and so a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, you missed out, or you didn't get to experience like your 20s. You didn't get to live your life, kind of thing." And I think that I'm really okay with that because it's something I
Mm-hmm.
wanted. It's always something I
Right.
wanted. I was that kid, that boy in class. I was always drawing like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I would always draw, "Oh yeah, this is what I want to be. I want to have a house, a family, a
Mm-hmm.
wife, a couple kids, dog, cat, kind of thing."
Yep.
I was always that kid in class, and so I think it's always been a desire of mine. So when it comes to like what I would want to pass to like the next dad is to just, cut out, like, all the noise around you, because there's going to be
Mhm.
so much noise coming from all direction about how to father, how to husband, and how to be, everything you need to be for your kid. When really it's going to be the most natural thing you've ever done at any
Okay.
age, at any phase. It's going to be the most natural thing you did. Are you going to mess up a couple times, put a diaper on backwards? Sure.
Right. Right.
Are you gonna not swaddle the baby, fully, and they're gonna break out of the swaddle and start crying? Yes. Are you gonna make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. You're going to, and
Mhm.
I hope you do. I really hope you do make mistakes, because that's how you're gonna learn. That's how you're gonna get
Right.
better. That's how you're gonna refine it. That's how you're gonna get better. If you're not making mistakes, you're doing something wrong, I think. Mm, or you're not doing anything at all. If you
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Well,
think is the other side of that. If you're not making the mistakes, you're not doing anything at all. You're just letting your significant other do all the work, kind of thing. Because if
Right.
you're doing
Right.
it, you should be making a mistake one every, 5 opportunities you have with that kid. Maybe you laid him down wrong, maybe you didn't hold him,
Mhm.
100, you didn't support the head 100%, kind of little things like that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're gonna make mistakes. It's gonna be
Mhm.
okay, right? They're gonna survive. Trust me, they're gonna survive. They're gonna be all right. They're gonna be okay. And really just you don't gotta sweat the little stuff. You don't gotta take out the little stuff. Like, do your part, do your part to the best you can. Keep learning along the way and keep getting better as you go. You're never gonna be perfect. Always just really focus on connecting with your kid, make
Mhm.
sure you're on a
Yeah.
routine from the beginning. You're getting up, every 3, 4 hours, whatever you guys establish is going to work best. You're doing your part, you're changing the diapers, you're connecting with the kid, you're getting on the floor and playing, you're doing the things as they start to get older, get into sports, you're there at practice, you're there for games, you're whenever they have school stuff, you're there right in the front kind of thing. And you're always just, front row, you're there and you're with them. So I'll say take all that for what you will, and that's what I would say.
That was a lot, but I needed to hear it. Got some good notes out of that, and no, I really do appreciate that. It's just when we've talked about the ingrained perfectionism in us men to do everything right, and so bringing it back to that connection point really puts it into a better perspective. And so, thank you for going into that.
Of course. Yeah, and I hope you do make mistakes when you become a dad.
I know I will.
I hope you do. I hope you do. Learn from them and get better. That's what you're gonna do. That's what's gonna make you a better dad,
Hmm.
um, and make you more prepared for when you have baby number 2. God willing, of course.
Well, hopefully all the babies possible. I'm that
Hopefully,
kind of
like
dad.
yeah, hopefully, like 6 or 7, Had to drop a little 6, 7 on there. Anyways, I dropped that up at my all staff training yesterday. What were we doing? It was one of the like reflection questions during our professional development workshop was like, what chapter are you on right now in your story? And I took full advantage. And I think I'm on like chapter 6 or 7, guys. And then it was a great moment. It was a great moment. Anyways, now that we're laughing, let's jump into the dad zone here real quick, wrap this thing up. And then yeah, so the dad zone, funnest part of the podcast, people say. We've been having fun. We haven't talked about anything too heavy, too serious today. It's been a little bit shorter. My apologies. I blame technology. Not my fault. Not taking responsibility. Just kidding.
Hey, it happens to us all.
I had a couple too many angry orchards at the social part of the all staff yesterday. So during social hours. So I had a couple too many angry orchards. Anyways, um, no, so in the dad zone here, first question, does pineapple go on pizza?
yes. Specifically, barbecue base, Italian sausage, and pineapple.
I mean, when Paul and I were roommates, that was our go-to pizza. So yeah.
Disgusting.
Tried it though? Have you tried that specific combo?
I'm never gonna try that. That sounds awful. That sounds even worse than just a traditional Hawaiian pizza.
Man, don't knock it till you try it.
I'm gonna have to talk to the Italian pizza shop owners again on the podcast and tell them that
Yeah,
diabolical
they're
combo.
not going to be happy with us. That's for sure.
No, they're not at all. And there's several of them. There's several Italians that have been like traditional Italians. One owns a traditional Italian pizza shop, and yeah, I'll let her know. I'll let her know about
Just don't
that
give
one.
them our address.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't want the mafia showing up.
exactly.
No mafia relation there, trust me. It'd be cool if there was though. I need to
Yeah.
talk to people in the mafia. That would be cool. Anyways, who are 3 people dead or alive that you would like to invite over for dinner or have on Why Dad?
Great question. My mom passed in 2014. Think I would bring her on because she raised 9 of us. Andrew, you got one?
I mean, I was going to go with my granddad that has passed. He was a father of 8, ran a successful construction company at the same time, and a farm in central Minnesota. So he had a huge family, a business, and kind of family business. He was someone he was one that really hammered the connection part in my life. You know, we always wanted to go to his house to have fun, and just be with him. And he was a goober, and I love the man so much. And I think I'd have to think about my third. My second one would be Lee Iacocca. He worked for Ford, was the CEO of Chrysler, a very successful businessman, and really strived in his personal life as a husband to be the best. And he's written plenty of books that are really, really inspirational. One of them is called Where Have All the Leaders Gone? And he just talks about a lack of true leadership in today's society. So he's always been kind of like a successful guy that I've always looked up to and aspired to be.
I like it. What is your guys' guilty pleasure food? I swear if you say that pizza, I'm ending this.
I mean, I've got a hell of a sweet tooth, so anything sweet, particularly cookie dough ice cream.
I mean, this goes back to when Paul and I were roommates, but we would just buy tubs of frosting and eat it with a spoon.
The chocolate
Yeah.
kind.
Low-key sounds pretty delicious.
I
Yeah.
still do
What-
it to this day.
And then what is one piece of advice that you guys would both offer to a new dad, 18 to 22 years old, just starting out his fatherhood journey?
Being a father is like literally anything else in life. You're gonna suck at it at first, but you're going to figure it out and get better along the way. And that's okay. Like, Jay, you were talking to Andrew earlier about I hope you make mistakes because you're gonna. But that's why we're doing Why Dad.
Mhm.
And I'm sure why you're doing Young Dad podcast is you're not alone. That diaper that didn't seem to hold on any shit inside of it, and it went everywhere, like you losing your temper, you not having energy to play with your kids, whatever it is, you're not alone. Other dads are feeling it, but if you're intentional about it, you can become the dad that you want to be.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just going to echo what you told me. Along with take full advantage of that time. Spend every minute you can when they're young. My 5 nieces and nephews live with me now, and I love spending the time with them. They used to get rambunctious, but it's kind of been helping me understand more and more like the role that what a good role model can have in their life. Yes, my role's different as an uncle than from a dad, but we need to focus on connection because kids crave that. They just want to be a part of our lives, and they want us a part of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, boys. Well, this has been a lot of fun. To our
Mhm.
listener, make sure you guys check out Why Dad Podcast, available on all platforms for real, funny, and heartfelt conversations about fatherhood, marriage, and modern masculinity. You can follow Paul and Andrew at the Why Dad Podcast Instagram. You can find them on Facebook, the Why Dad Podcast, YouTube, Why Dad Podcast, and then of course their website, whydadpodcast.com. Big shout out to you guys from Why Dad for joining us today. You guys are proof that sometimes the most important conversations men can have are the ones they've been avoiding. If this episode made you laugh, think, or maybe even tear up a little bit when we got a little bit deeper there, share it with another dad who needs a reminder that he's not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and keep the conversation going. And until next time, keep showing up, keep loving hard, and keep asking why. This is the Young Dad Podcast, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
And that's it.